Hello everybody, I am Sleep Buccaneer, and this is the final theory I will be covering for the Key universe as planned, with Master Ava's possible fate being an out there extra. Thank you for checking all of my theory videos out. Honestly, I'm really happy that you guys find this theory series interesting. I broke a record of 300 plus channel views and 4 plus subscribers. Yay! So maybe one day I'll hit the 10 plus mark. That'd be pretty cool. But ignoring all of that, today's theory is on who has been chosen to keep the Book of Prophecies out of the new Union leaders, including Strelitzia. It's only fair, right? So to kick this off, I want to visit Recoded for a minute and look at Maleficent's conversation with Pete. She said that the ancient Book of Prophecies is capable of transcribing events that have yet to come and producing worlds and beings that are meant to live in them. This apparently is similar to what Jiminy's journal was capable of doing when the data in it was digitized and animated. Maleficent even says there may be a connection worth finding to compare the two books. And depending on the next update or reveal for Kingdom Hearts 3, there very well could be. In the cutscene where Master Ava speaks to the Master of Masters, he said he wanted to pass down the Book of Prophecies to one lucky candidate. This person will have the ability to create a new world for the Dandelions to live in, but it's currently unknown and doubtful whether he'll see future events or not. Bear in mind, the Book of Prophecies stops at the Keyblade War. Nothing else follows after that, so the only information of relevance would be how to create a new world. We'll actually come back to this because something very interesting is swimming around here. So how does all of this relate to Maleficent and the Dandelions? What's the connection she's trying to find? Well, I'll start this off with this misleading detail. In back cover, the second case of Lushu shows the Master of Masters explaining to Lushu that he can't bring the Book of Prophecies with him because of time paradoxes. So I went back and watched the first couple of minutes in the movie before the Master talks to her. At the start of the movie, the cheery narrator tells the audience that the Master gave five of his apprentices a copy of the Book of Prophecies. Remember, 4 of those copies are incomplete because of the lost page. That means only 2 books are completed, the Master of Masters' original manuscript and Gula's copy. Now here's where a hole forms in the plot. In the beginning, it's established that only 6 books exist. And then in Ava's recount of her mission, he says he's giving a Book of Prophecies away. Unless he's suspicious of Lushu stealing a copy for himself, and it doesn't even seem like he would, then it makes no sense for the Master to even bring that up. Lushu was never given a copy, and the Master doesn't seem to want him with one. If that's the case, however, why does Lushu know so much about the book? When he talks to Ava about the traitor near the end of Key, he doesn't come off as someone who's uninformed or surprised or even heartbroken by what he's seen. Now, just because he doesn't have a copy for himself doesn't mean he never read the book. In fact, he may have read directly from the Master's original manuscript. Or did he? Well, that's where the bridge between a lie and a plan starts. Having the Master say no Book of Prophecies to keep you company implies that Lushu did have his own copy. The Master of Masters just didn't tell him that it was his because it was a complete and exact recopy of his original manuscript without any pages being ripped out. So it could easily be masked as the original manuscript. That means in actuality, there are 3 completed versions of the Book of Prophecies. Since Lushu can't bring his copy with him on his journey, there are 2 complete versions of the Book of Prophecies in the Master's possession. I mentioned in my theory about the Master of Masters that everything he ever learned as a Keyblade wielder could have been written in journals much like Jiminy's journals. Really, he wouldn't need the Book of Prophecies because his version of it is a work in progress rather than a completed book. Works in progress can be changed because there's potential to add more, meaning his Book of Prophecies is an extension of his power. He needs no name to see beyond the war, but he needs his Book of Prophecies to transcribe the events that he will see unfold in the future. The Book of Prophecies that Maleficent really wants is therefore the one that's always changing, not the one that's already written up to its ending point. Furthermore, it looks like any copy of the Book of Prophecies would have the recipe for creating something like Dream Eaters, but only a completed book can give you more creative powers. That means Maleficent needs a completed version of the book in order to make worlds the way she seems to want. Jiminy's journals from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 were completed chronicles, so when Recoded rolls around, the worlds that are seen are more like shortened, glitchy versions of the real thing. But you need detailed information about the worlds in order to recreate them. That's the biggest connection between the 2 books. Completed versions are capable of producing worlds and the inhabitants meant to live in them, but an incomplete version will only grant some creative power to make new beings that bend to the will of their master. Now, I'll leave this for Nomura and Square to dwell on. They're the only ones who can really prove me right or wrong. So let's jump back to what the Master told Ava. He chose one of the leaders among his list of candidates to keep the Book of Prophecies. The question is, which book? Lushu's copy or his own? From the recent updates, Blaine, or Brain if you prefer, was creating spirit dream eaters using a recipe from the Book of Prophecies. I'm going to go ahead and say that's Ira's copy, because that's where he frequently sat to read it. If that's the case, then there is some serious trouble beginning to brew here. Why? Because that leaves the question of where are the other foretellers' copies exactly. If Gula left his completed version just lying around like Ira might have, someone could easily pick it up and take it with them. You can't tell me that every single wielder who wasn't a dandelion went to battle. Someone didn't want to fight or die. The master even expressed to Ava that if someone other than the attended person got his hands on the Book of Prophecies, then everyone would be in trouble. Gula's copy was the only one among the foretellers that was complete. That means Lushu's copy of the book hasn't floated its way to the chosen leader yet. The Master of Masters wouldn't give away his manuscript. He needs it to keep filling the pages with information, even if it extends to multiple books like a catalog of the world's history and a section in the library. So who exactly has been deemed worthy to have Lushu's copy of the Book of Prophecies? Originally, I thought Ventus had it, because that would give Xehanort a reason for being so desperate to have him on his side to craft the Keyblade. But I changed my mind on that, because that would be too obvious. Also, what he told Skald and Ephemer when they met was a bit alarming for me. One, he had no friends before becoming a foreteller, so he essentially has no reason to want to create a new world for anyone, because he doesn't know anyone. Now, for the same premise of not having friends, he could also want to create a new world for the greater good. Two, he himself admitted that he wasn't really at the top of the rankings or anything for his union. Just about 52% of Union Cross players are low in rank, and none of us were chosen to be foretellers. Therefore, Vin has something really special about him that's beyond his limitations and power. A hidden strength or perfect balance of light and darkness in his heart. A balance so perfect that it can make an artificial Keyblade and full Kingdom Hearts into opening up to Master Xehanort. That perfect balance would be a great reason for why he would have the Book of Prophecies. Now, the problem with Vin having the Book of Prophecies, however, is that little tidbit he mentioned about not having friends. Ventus, in Birth by Sleep, was willing to essentially kill himself for Terra and Aqua for the greater good. That kind of motivation can be misdirected fairly easily. If he's willing to off himself for the safety of his friends, he'd be willing to do something else of a desperate measure if it would protect Ephemer and Skald, since they become his new friends. Suicide is not the only desperate measure one can take. Destroying a world, assassinating someone else, or maybe even unleashing darkness are also desperate measures. If Ventus is ever that desperate, it sucks for the rest of us. Now let's look at Ephemer. This character is the only one you see who was asked to be a union leader after the Keyblade War. But even before that, he was a smart kid with a kind heart. He knew something was up with the world before you even started the game, and Master Ava was aware of that. I don't know what his rankings are, but I imagine them being exceptional. If that's the case, why not Ephemer? Well, Master Ava wouldn't give him any details about the Book of Prophecies beforehand, so why would she suddenly dump the whole book in his lap and give him a thumbs up? He was even hesitant about being a union leader and didn't want to repeat anything that led up to the war in the first place. Now, you would think someone who didn't want the world to suffer a second time would be perfect for the passing of the book, right? Well, maybe not. Ephemer was snooping around beforehand trying to get the truth out of someone. That kind of person might be easily corruptible. While he doesn't seem like the manipulative type, with a little bit of darkness, he very well could be. And in his search for the truth, Ephemer is known to basically leave or abandon his friends or even try to sweet-talk details out of another. That makes his candidacy questionable. Take him off the list. Okay, so what about Strelitzia? She pretty much was in the same situation as Ven, with having no friends. For the most part, she was on her own and questioned why she was chosen to be a leader too. The thing is, she was never given the Book of Prophecies, and her assassinator didn't take that book. He or she took the green book without his rules for the new unions in them. Strelitzia probably was a great candidate for the Book of Prophecies. But if that's the case, they would have shown her having it by now. Because of her adoration for the player, I imagine she would want a world that you, or the player, could live in without fighting and making more friends like her, Ephemer, and Skald. For this reason, she would have been exceptionally high on the list, but her death strips that possibility from her. Even then, I still don't think she would have gotten the Book of Prophecies because she never demonstrated behavior in which her candidacy was appreciable. So knock her off the list. Alright, so what about Blaine? He's actually one of the first leaders to physically show his green book and ask questions on it. Now, Blaine is a pretty chill guy, but he's very intelligent and shows initiative when it comes to the sciences. Notice, he's the one who suggests making spirit dream meters to erase the nightmares the dandelions are having. Based on how he is, Blaine could be a potential candidate for the Book of Prophecies. This mainly stems from the fact that he's more scientific, much like the Master of Masters, and has a personality almost similar to him. Not enough information has been given on Blaine, so he can stay on the list for now until more is shown on his character. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Let's take a look at Lauriam. Out of everyone else among the leaders, this one has been the most distant up until Blaine volunteered him to help make spirit dream eaters. So far, he hasn't demonstrated any behavior that wouldn't make him a candidate. He was the last to appear, the last to enter the Master's chamber, and the last to actually participate in the new Union leader's first order of business. He's more like those minor characters in some movies or drama shows that are typically silent, but always watching in the background. The one moment when he approached the bridge between a minor and a supporting character was when he was pushed to help out by Blaine. Notice, Lauriam was excited to participate in something scientific. That shows that Lauriam also has some degree of technical intelligence, much like Blaine. Otherwise, he would have just waited at the table and increased all suspicions that he's up to something. This silent, watchful nature that he's been demonstrating actually puts him higher on the list as a candidate for the Book of Prophecies, and here's why. Master Alpha told Ephemer that the world would meet its impending doom after the war, right? She said the fate of the foretellers was unknown, but it wasn't looking good either. Notice how she never fully explained anything about the traitor. At this point, I'm assuming that's because she hadn't spoken to Lushu yet, so she still doesn't know anything about the traitor. Now, why is that so important? Well, only someone with the Book of Prophecies and someone who read through it front to back would take precautions when approaching his new so-called comrades. Yes, he can still participate in whatever plans are agreed upon, but since the foretellers before them couldn't find the traitor and wound up getting themselves killed over it, then that would mean the traitor still exists. It wouldn't be impossible for the traitor to not only survive the war, but be among the dandelions, or worse, among the new leaders. The Book of Prophecy states that the traitor is the one who bears the sigil. It never said what sigil. And the foretellers are represented by animals, things you can actually use as sigils to represent your unions. Even worse, if the sigil is really the Rakusan sigil, then the chances of it hiding among the foretellers' sigils actually increase. By how much isn't so easy to determine. So in reality, Lauriam hasn't been demonstrating behavior that makes him unfit for his new role. In fact, it looks like he not only makes a great candidate for the Book of Prophecies, but he might already have it. Okay, so now I come to Skuld. Honestly, Skuld is the highest on the list for the Book of Prophecies, in my opinion. And I say this for one distinct reason. She wasn't in back cover. So wait, you might be saying, how is she the most likely candidate for having the Book of Prophecies because of her absence in the movie? I'm not understanding your reasoning. Well, let's look at the key series for a second. If you notice, when Ava gives her speech to the dandelions about being the world's hope, Skuld is in that crowd of people, but Ephemer and the others aren't. Don't you think that's a little strange to have vital members of your group missing during this important meeting? If they're on missions for their unions, then that's one thing. But the dandelions are being instructed on what to do when the war starts, and their training is supposed to be different from the usual. Everyone needs to be clued in on that. So why isn't everyone there? When Skuld is revealed as the second union leader, Ephemer reveals that they met at the same place twice, before and after the war. That means between the time of her joining the dandelions and going to that specific meeting and the time when she meets Ephemer again before the war, as stated by Ephemer himself, Master Ava pulled Skuld to the side and assigned her to be a leader. That's obvious, right? So here's where it stops being so obvious. Skuld is actually the only character, I believe, who was asked to be a leader last. And I think Master Ava gave that speech to new dandelions and not veterans. It wouldn't make sense to tell a veteran something he already knows. So let's take a look at Strelitzia's introduction. She said that she frequented the same place for 2 years as a Keyblade wielder before she came across you or the player. Now think with me on this. If Strelitzia was a Keyblade wielder for over 2 years, then how long do you think Ephemer was a Keyblade wielder? It had to be around the same time, give or take. Therefore, his career as a dandelion is not short. In fact, he's been one for a while. The same goes for everyone else, possibly. Now, it would be extremely easy to assume that the oldest members of the Dandelions are possible candidates for the Book of Prophecies, but that's too broad of a range, and there's no information detailing how long the Dandelions have been in existence. In fact, if you pay attention to the time skips and back cover, only a little over a year passes. Now, back cover is set during the events in Unchained Key, so the Dandelions have already formed by this time. That would mean their foundation has been around, according to Strelitzia, maybe about a year before Unchained Key and back cover even starts. However, if the Master of Masters is as clever as I think he is, he wouldn't choose a Dandelion among the veterans because they're more capable of twisting the truth of the book and using it to their advantage for something else. He would choose someone who would join the Dandelions closer to the time of the Keyblade War because that person would see how darkness is spreading and how it's affecting those closest to him or her. In order to keep the light alive, you have to see the ins and outs of what could happen if you fail to save the world from darkness. Only that person would be more determined to right the wrongs of his or her predecessors and create a new world that doesn't repeat the events they already witnessed. Now here's what's interesting. Skull was not a Dandelion a year before the events of the game. She became a Dandelion during the events of the game. So let's say the Master of Masters was evaluating a veteran Dandelion to carry the Book of Prophecies. That's Ven, Ephemer, Blaine, Strelitzia, or possibly Lauriam. Now, I took Ven out because of his ability to craft an artificial Keyblade, and I took Ephemer out because he was being too nosy about the secrets of the book. So that leaves Blaine, Strelitzia, and Lauriam on the list. Strelitzia died, so she's out, but I don't think she would have gotten it anyway. Both boys, Blaine and Lauriam, have potential to get the book, and Lauriam is actually higher on the list than Blaine because of his behavior thus far. So let's take Blaine off the list and say he has Ira's copy since he was using it to create Spirit Dream Eaters. That leaves Lauriam as the most likely candidate. What about Skull, though? Why was she so high on the list? Well, if the Master is the clever sneak I think he is and decided not to choose a veteran, but rather a newcomer, then that leaves us with Skull instead of Lauriam. Since her career as a Dandelion is the shortest of the leaders, and she became a Dandelion as the war was starting, look at how much higher the possibility is. And here's a little more to help this out. So what behavior suggests that she may have it? She's not quite like Lauriam, who keeps his distance, and she's not quite like Ephemer, whose word has been the law up to this point. And she's not exactly like Blaine either, who's been operating with Ira's copy of the Book of Prophecies. Well, in Key, Skull listens to Gula read an excerpt from his completed copy of the Book of Prophecies. By this time, Master Ava is talking to Lushu before the two come into conflict with each other and learn about the traitor from there. Between the time she spoke to Gula and the second meeting with all of the Dandelions before the war, she listened to the very end of the Book of Prophecies. Therefore, when she was appointed leader, Ava was proven right when she told Skull about the end of the world. If Skull brought up that she heard about it from Gula, that's all Ava would need to give Skull the Book of Prophecies, so that she can read the rest of it from the beginning. As I said before, the silent, watchful characters typically engage with the other characters as they normally would, but would be fairly cautious while doing so. When Skull and Ephemer talked to the players' charity and introduced the idea of Union Cross, that's the first time you really see Skull questioning Ephemer and being cautious. I think if more moments like that happen, it'll come out more and more that she knows more than she's telling. Well, guys, that's all I actually got. Who knows what'll be revealed in the next update? Union Cross has a lot of questions to answer and more clues to give before any more theories are proven right or wrong. So let me know what you think about the Book of Prophecies in the comment section, and feel free to check the other videos in the description below. Support those other YouTubers who have theorized on this before me. Thank you for clicking on this video, and have a nice day.